Hello and welcome to another episode of the On the Moment podcast. This is not today an NBA Top Shot show. I always forget to get that graphic updated now that we have all day to talk about. It's not an Owners Club show. It is an OTM show, but it's an NFL all day focus show. I'm here with Ryan and Jay. We're going to be talking NFL draft implications to all day collecting. We're going to be talking schedule release implications to all day collecting. We're just going to be talking about some football. It's an awesome time of year. Ryan, how you doing tonight?
Good, Bach. Pleasure as always.
Yeah. Jay, what are you thinking? What a time, huh?
I mean, it's just getting that little breadcrumb of NFL news. Just is like, it's a great time, just some NBA basketball playoffs, conference finals, college baseball, which I think is like a really underrated just sporting event and sports betting event. And then just, getting those nuggets all summer long to where we're playing some football.
Yeah, I know it's the end of a long grind for you with the kind of the game and line betting, and the start of a long grind for Ryan with all the offseason awards markets. If you're not following these guys on Twitter, you're missing out. Ryan, a great contributor over at Establish the Run, a lot of money to be made listening to him in season-long award markets. So highly recommend following that. And then, Jay, I don't know that you're putting out picks in mass. You're trying to keep that edge, but
yeah, I'm sure Ryan knows this. Everyone, when you win, and you give out something, no one's there to congratulate you. And then if you make a stance and it ends up on cold takes, everyone comes after you. So I've learned the hard way that there's not too much, a benefit in doing that, but DMs are always open.
Awesome. Well, we're going to jump into the draft and the schedule release implications in just a minute. We are recording this on Wednesday night, and as we are recording this, the NBA Top Shot Score Spaces is live. In fact, we were originally planning to do this live, and then we realized that no one would be here because they're all going to be listening to Dapper's explanation of the Top Shot score. I know, we'll have we've got some explanations on our Twitter account. I'm sure we'll have an article out kind of explaining what the high-level takeaways are from the Top Shot score. So definitely, check in on that tomorrow, or I guess as you're listening to this on Thursday, we'll have something up on the site as well. I know all-day packs, no packs this week, kind of a surprise, but they did, tease that there might be some NFL all-day packs next week. So excited about the next round of all-day packs, and we'll see. We'll see if we can get some of the guys that we're going to talk about today. Just quick OTM update before we jump into the draft stuff. I think the one, the big thing that we want to, the big news on the OTM front recently has been the announcement of the OTM Sniper, and kind of with that, the OTM Premium product. So again, articles up on the site kind of detailing out what we're going to have, but the building on the OTM True Value model that we produced and just kind of made public, we've developed a OTM Sniper tool to find real-time deals. Basically takes the OTM True Value and evaluates, hey, where are there moments that are placed for sale that are significantly different from a pricing perspective than what we see on, where the true value is significantly better than what the price is listed for. So it's an awesome tool, and is going to, as such, is going to be part of kind of an OTM Premium product, which we're targeting to roll out later this summer. You can get some details on that. I'm sure for some this will be a bit of a disappointment because all the OTM tools that we've had since launch have been free, but as we're trying to continue to build the best suite of products, that takes a lot of investment on our side, and we want the people who are going to get the value out of that to not have to compete with just every single collector out there. And so really excited about the Sniper tool, really excited about the additional products that we're going to be able to bring to the OTM Premium product when it debuts this summer.
Yeah, we were kind of talking before the show about this. I kind of just stumbled on it, and I'm the type of person that needs to kind of play around with stuff to learn. And spent like 30 minutes, an hour on there, and I got myself like halfway to the playoff set collection, which I had like no intention of doing, but I was like, oh, that's all it takes for the Warriors Grizzlies set, and that's all it takes for. So I mean, beware, you get on there, it's a lot of fun, and we were talking about, I think in the fall, come November, that I might try to actually play fantasy basketball, kind of using that and kind of implementing some more short term to medium term, collecting into my Top Shot portfolio instead of just being on team, hold forever. Maybe not going to be a flipper, and I don't want anybody, unsubscribing here, but just taking advantage of the marketplace, and that sniper tool is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know. I've used similar products in the past. Used ours just a little bit. Haven't had a ton of time to be buying on Top Shot recently, although it's a good time to buy if you want to hold for the long term. So, all right. Well, we're really here with the NFL experts to talk NFL stuff. So, we're here kind of 3 weeks post draft, 1 week post schedule release. I know Ryan, both you and Jay had some articles. I'll kick it to you first, and you kind of put out some initial reactions to the draft, and how collectors might take it. But kind of give me your overall thoughts. What was your biggest takeaway from draft and draft weekend? Because there was a ton of player movement, et cetera, during draft weekend. What was your biggest takeaway? And, what are the things that you're thinking about as a all-day collector going into next season?
From a general football standpoint, the Lions, Eagles, and Jets, their needles all went up pretty considerably for me. I thought the Chiefs had a pretty good draft after a questionable offseason. And, Green Bay got themselves they didn't get themselves a replacement for Devontae Adams, but they got themselves an interesting athlete and rookie receiver Christian Watson. I don't necessarily think Watson's going to do well early. I think he's going to be slotted in the MVS role from when MVS was a rookie, which was essentially he'll run go routes, he'll run stop and goes. He's going to have a very limited route tree because a lot of what Rodgers does is timing related, which is, I think, the biggest issue they're going to have in missing Adams. Is Adams was someone he could run a 12-yard in and the ball would be in the air before Adams made his break, where Watson's not a guy that they're going to be able to do that with early on. But long term, when I watched him this offseason, he's every year there's like 5-6 guys that really pop for me, like as an athlete. They're very unique people. And he was on offense. He was the guy that really, I can't believe he's as fluid of an athlete as he is at his size. So I'm interested to see what happens with him long term.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit shocking to me when I was working on the article that I had to go get a Zach Wilson thumbnail to put him as the title image. Now, some of that's because most of the guys that we have on there don't have an all-day moment. But can you elaborate a little bit on your thoughts on Zach Wilson and the Jets offseason or
Sure,
draft?
Definitely. If you're a football fan and you think about what the Jets roster looked like 2 years ago, they've done a remarkable job completely overhauling it. I don't think they're necessarily like an 11, 12-win team at this point, and the AFC is loaded with dynamic quarterbacks, so the Jets might still be in a rebuilding phase. But all of a sudden, they have an interesting skill group. Breece Hall's a really good-looking rookie running back. They have a receiving trio, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, and they just drafted, his name escapes me. He's an Ohio State guy, Bach. Why don't you help me out on that?
Oh, is that Garrett Wilson?
Yes, Garrett Wilson. That's a really good-looking trio going forward. They have a good tight end pair, too, with Conklin and Ozoma. Their offensive line's better. Now, do I love Zach Wilson as a player? My answer would be no. But I've seen enough where I'm at least not out on him yet. This is a year where I'm really looking forward to see what they do with him. I'm looking to see if they take a step forward on offense, become more consistent. So I think if you're into speculative buys, he plays in a big market. If they're competitive, things are going to look up there. But one thing I'll throw in on that note is the Jets opening schedule is pretty rough. So I think I might wait a few weeks and then pounce a little later. But I'll probably write something about that once we get into the season.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, The Jets, first of all, I'm really impressed by you, Ryan. No mention of defensive players. I know you're a defensive guy, but yeah, obviously when we're talking about collecting, it's all about the quarterback position. And really the big takeaway I had was the jump of importance of the wide receiver. It's kind of like the wide receiver on a rookie contract is the new quarterback on a rookie contract. And the other thing too is just the turnover, right? So we're looking at the Jets right now, and you just look at all these skill positions, and you're looking at 2023, they're all most likely going to be there. And even if Zach Wilson, let's say, tanks or doesn't do well, that might hurt all those skill position players. But as we just saw with this offseason, there could be a new quarterback, could be a star quarterback in the Jets, given the moves that we're kind of seeing now. So I really like Ryan's point about the weapons are there. And it's kind of similar in a scenario with Miami, right? The weapons are there, and we might have a different quarterback next, in 2023. So you can make medium to short-term investments a lot of different directions, right? So you can take Zach Wilson, and if he's performing, then you're good. But let's say you have Zach Wilson and it's declining. Well, then maybe you can purchase some of those skill position players who could get a huge jump this time next year. Let's say if they were to bring in a top 5, top 10 quarterback. So to me, my biggest takeaway was a lot of similar stuff that Ryan had, but it was really just kind of how the league is changing as the quarterback is still the alpha in this league. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, but I think the wide receiver has made a small step to gaining or narrowing that gap, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Hey, it's telling that Zach Wilson's moment we were just showing on the screen is a rush, right? He was a rookie quarterback, and their highlight moment that they picked for him was a running play. Did not have a good year, but I think that's that, low risk, high reward type of play that we want to target as collectors, where they materially improved his weapons, but people are going to come in kind of soured on him from the rookie season where he was just objectively not good. I mean, the best quarterback play they got all year was Josh Johnson's monster game, and Wilson was probably 3rd or 4th in terms of like quarterback talent or at least production that they had last year in terms of like effectiveness on the field. But you give a guy who was a high draft pick a bunch of weapons, and you buy him at kind of the floor, and there's upside there. And, I'm certain that his price could go down a little bit from that, $50 for the common moment that they had. But relatively low risk, high upside play if he really explodes. So I definitely love the Zach Wilson. Jay, what are some other, besides just in general, the rookie wide receivers, who are some other players that kind of caught your eye on, coming out of draft day and situations?
Yeah, I think a really underrated move was a lot of it is what not only teams do, but don't do. So like the Ravens sending out Hollywood Brown to Arizona and not taking a stud wide receiver to try to replace him. So I think Rashad Bateman is somebody who obviously improved their stock. And, I've in the last 18 months or so become a much more active dynasty player. So I know he moved up a lot of boards in dynasty after not only what the Ravens did with sending out Hollywood Brown, but really not bringing in a lot of draft capital for a pass catcher, or I shouldn't say pass catcher. They had 2 tight ends in the 4th round, but no wide receivers. So I think that's kind of a sneaky, kind of really good organization, but small market that kind of gets overlooked a lot. And, just the movement with Devontae Adams, I think we're going to learn really fast. I mean, there's no doubt Devontae Adams is a great player, but how much was that Aaron Rodgers and how much was that Devontae Adams? And I think we'll see a little bit of that. But if we had to stick with the rookies, obviously their moments aren't out right now. But we have like that hodgepodge in Kansas City. Obviously Sky Moore, everyone, wants to talk about, and we love rookies, of course. But, we have some people, Juju, things of that nature are still pretty young that could be making a huge jump if they have that connection, and you kind of have that with the Packers as well. We talked about, I could see the Packers wide receiver room going 8 different ways, right? Who actually comes in, makes a connection with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, his talent's unbelievable, but he's clearly a tough person to work with. So if he finds a bond with somebody, even if it's not one of the rookies, that might be someone we want to pounce on.
Yeah, I love that call. Again, upside in uncertainty, right? And yeah, Packers drafted Christian Watson, but if he doesn't end up being the guy this year, there's a lot of people who could be the guy. And, I know we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit to the conversation we'll have, but there's both a, long-term collecting, long-term trajectory play here, as well as a short-term utility upside. We've already seen the first NFL All-Day Challenge announced. And, if we've learned anything from Top Shot, or if they mimic anything that Top Shot has been doing successfully, we'll likely see some short-term utility from weekly challenges based on performance. And so if some of that has, pass catching component, it's hard to imagine that there's not going to be a time where an Aaron Rodgers pass catcher is successful. And so those are the types of situations. I think the Baltimore situation you called out as well, with Rashad Bateman, being presumably the guy now, but he also hasn't really shown that he can be the guy. And, is there someone else who might step up and come from a little bit of an unheralded spot to take the reins as the primary pass catcher there? Ryan, any thoughts on kind of some of the other big trades? I mean, just so many wide receivers moved. Obviously, AJ Brown moved. We called out Hollywood Brown. Any big takeaways from some of that kind of non-draft but draft-related offseason action?
Yeah, I actually think the Hollywood move was good for Hollywood. He played with Kyler Murray in college. I loved both of them in college, so I'm very interested in that. That is, unless Kyler Murray holds out, which he wants $70 million a year. And to your point with the Jets, there's probably a non-zero chance that guy ends up with the Jets next year, based on, it seems like he's doing everything he can to leave Arizona. AJ Brown, I'm not sure I would call Jalen Hurts an upgrade for him. I think there's potential for it to be an upgrade for him, but it's excellent news for Jalen Hurts and the Eagles in general. So I think if you're looking to buy moments from a fantasy angle, I think that's better for Jalen Hurts than it is for AJ Brown, where it's kind of like a parallel move for AJ Brown. We were talking about the Green Bay wide receiver room. If my current best ball exposure says anything, I believe Allen Lazard's in for a better year. I don't love Lazard as a player by any means, but he's been there the longest. And again, a lot of what Rodgers does is timing based. On a similar front, Aaron Jones is also in an interesting position this year. He's the guy, he's the highest paid skill position player on that team by a mile. So they split running back duties. They're probably going to continue to do that, but he'll probably see some more passing game work. I would say offhand, similar for Tyreek Hill. That's not a good move for him necessarily, but it is for Tua. And if, like we talked with Wilson and like you mentioned with Miami, if Tua is not the guy this year, they're going to know. He's been given everything that anyone could ever need to show that you're an NFL quarterback. So he's another good, interesting, speculative buy where the floor is you have a moment next year that's worth nothing. But if he hits, you're in good shape.
And I think it says something about the state of this quarterback class that we've made it 20 minutes into this, talking about the NFL draft and haven't talked about any of them. Jay, quick takeaways on kind of the rookie quarterback class. Obviously, extremely underwhelming, at least from a draft capital perspective. People were not willing to invest in quarterbacks. One in the first round, I think just one in the second. What's your takeaway on kind of the top quarterbacks from the draft?
I wasn't a huge Pickett fan in college or whatnot, but I do think an organization like Pittsburgh, using him as a first round pick, that says a lot. Kind of like I was talking about with Bateman. I wouldn't be so high on Bateman if it weren't the Ravens, although their kryptonite is drafting and developing wide receivers, but they just are such a good organization. So I do think Pickett has probably going to have some utility early on. And there's a good chance he'll be around for a while. And also just the fact that he is in an iconic franchise. And if, his bar for replacement of Ben, Ben Hall of Famer, of course, but his actual production last year, that bar is relatively low. So I think that's pretty good. I do think there's some interesting kind of dart throws, if you will. I'm not necessarily in love with any of these quarterbacks, but you can make a case for a number of them. I think Desmond Ridder is one where your imagination can get away with him a little bit. I mean, his accuracy is just a clear issue for him. And you talk to anybody, accuracy is either the number one two, mostly one or two, and at the very least, the third most important trait for a successful quarterback. So us saying, oh, he fixes his accuracy, he'll be a great quarterback. I mean, that's a major part of being, obviously, a quarterback. That being said, grade A character. You're talking about Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I mean, even if one of those hits their ceiling, let alone if they both get in their 75th, 80th percentile of what they could become in that dome, that's something, like I said, your imagination can really run wild with him on that one. But that's one I don't think you need to buy anytime soon. And kind of to Ryan's point, he talked about the up arrows. I completely agree with the Jets, Lions, and Eagles. And I would add that the Falcons could be in a much better situation this time next year, or even if you're thinking 2 years from now. But they're kind of at the earlier stage of that rebuild. So I wouldn't rush to buy any of those, but I would definitely keep an eye on that. I could easily see him making a Russell Wilson type impact too, where it's just like, man, he just comes in and just takes over. That being said, Marcus Mariota was brought in intentionally, and I know there's a lot of college comparisons with him. So that's one I am keeping an eye on.
Ryan, how are you approaching quarterback collecting in this rookie class?
Agreed on Pickett. Stable organization, going to be well supported. So Pickett's at least in play for the next 4 or 5 years to the end of his rookie deal to be on competitive teams, even if he's not a great player. Where I probably liked him a little bit more than most people did, but I'm not over the moon for him either. Ritter, I think Ritter's a game manager, but I agree with Jay. I think Atlanta's in a situation where 2 years from now, Atlanta could be where the Jets are right now, where it's like they're kind of now pretty interesting. So I thought that was a very good take. Corral could see early playing time. That staff in Carolina's, they're on the hot seat right now. If Sam Darnold comes out and bombs, Corral could be starting before the end of September. I think that's interesting, but not the greatest situation. Average situation at best. The guy that I'll be interested in from a collectible standpoint is Malik Willis, because what I want him in this all-day environment is I want him to see a few snaps where he makes one highlight-worthy play, where he only has one moment. That's it. No one cares about him because he didn't play. I'll buy a few of them cheap because I think Ryan Tannehill's a guy where you're not going to be beating the Chargers with Justin Herbert or the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes and the Bills with Josh Allen, so on and so forth, with Ryan Tannehill at the helm. So I think that's interesting. He's the guy I'll be looking for long-term to buy cheap.
Yeah, certainly not a lot of guys who look like they're going to come in and make an instant impact at the quarterback position as a rookie. We haven't talked yet about defensive players, Ryan. I know that probably is making you sad that we haven't gotten to it yet. Any guys that you're kind of particularly excited about from a defensive potential and fit perspective?
Yeah. All this talk about wide receivers is it's probably not great for my health, honestly. But I'm a Giants fan. Thibodeau's very interesting. Seems like he has the right personality. He's a high-end athlete. Hutchinson, I think, like Jay said, Jay's background on Hutchinson in his article was really interesting, where he's like basically Mr. Michigan. He's also Mr. Dan Campbell. Like, he's a relentless effort guy. He's a relentless effort kind of pass rusher where he's going to fit right into the culture they're trying to build there. I like Karlaftis with the Chiefs. If you're so inclined, you could go watch George Karlaftis versus Notre Dame and watch him split double teams for 10 minutes. I'm pretty interested in him. The Jets, again, Jeremiah Johnson's a good edge rusher. They got him at a really good value. Hamilton on the Ravens, interesting player. He reminds me of Richard Sherman, which is kind of odd since Sherman played corner and Hamilton's a safety, but they're both lengthy, instinctive, heady kind of players. Both of them. I really like Stingley. People think that the Texans were crazy for taking Stingley, but I really like Stingley. The Eagles defensive tackle, they took Davis. He's a bit of, people frame him as a space eater, and that's probably primarily true. He's probably going to be a two-down player for the most part, but he's a disruptive force. That guy that landed in the right team, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just add a few points because I'm not going to be able to hold a candle to defensive analysis with Ryan there. But I really like Kyle Hamilton going to the Ravens. I know I'm in the Maryland, D.C. area. I hate to be too homerish, but, the Eagles moved ahead to take Davis because he was kind of like pegged to go to the Ravens at 14, and the Ravens didn't trade down. And that was a huge sign to me because they're famous for trading down. Most likely they were going to take Davis, but they didn't flinch. They took Hamilton. Their defensive coordinator is coming from Michigan again, which I know Bach is just so all this talk, but he was with the Ravens for 7 years, spent 1 year as D coordinator with Michigan. They, of course, slayed the dragon, which was beating Ohio State.
All right. Enough of that.
But now they've come back, and they can use him all over. So, like I said, a really good organization. I'm curious to see how they use him, especially if they just gave Williams there a $70 million contract to play safety. So it just shows me they really like him. And then, Stingley to the Texans. You're going to need that villain. If it's a quarterback wide receiver league, you're going to need that villain. And I mean, he has just got some unreal talent, especially if you watch his freshman year as an 18-year-old on that LSU team that is just an absolute cheat code. He was the star. So I completely agree with those two players for sure.
All right. Last NFL draft take, then we'll talk schedule a little bit. Ryan, rookie of the year pick. It can be offensive or defensive, but I need a name.
I'll give you Breece Hall, offensive rookie of the year.
Offensive rookie of the year, Breece Hall, going running back. I mean, it is a weak quarterback class. Jay, anyone you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I it's funny because I just read Ryan stuff all the time about these type of picks. So him not taking a quarterback here actually has me a little worried. I can see Matt Corral coming in, let's say, kind of being successful, and let's say Christian McCaffrey is back to being Christian McCaffrey, and a couple of those wide receivers have DJ Moore takes that step we've been waiting for. I could see that. I think Pickett, if you get a good price, maybe Mitch is getting a lot of summer hype as the starter, and then Pickett comes in week 1, week 2, kind of like a Herbert situation. That might be one, but it's all price sensitive. Right now, I wouldn't take Pickett just because he's the only guy in round 1, things of that nature. So definitely something to monitor, definitely something to read from Ryan stuff. But him picking a running back has me going back to the well now.
I mean, you can get Corral 30-1 right now. You might want to think. You want to think about that. If
Jay's jumping over to the sports.
Yeah.
Wait till after the show.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to go with one of my boys, probably Olave. I think he's probably in a little bit of a better situation to win Rookie of the Year than Garrett Wilson. I appreciate the hope that the Jets take that big leap, but I think that Olave actually comes into a situation where he could make some noise early on. And I know we mentioned him in one of the articles, but pretty excited about his talent and about the situation where, it might actually be better for him if he's kind of the 1B wide receiver in that Saints offense. So, all right, well, we will jump and chat a little bit about, the schedule release. I know obviously kind of who's on what team is probably the most important thing as we think about success in terms of all day collecting, but thinking about, how do we optimize the schedule and use that information to our advantage and think through that strategically is another avenue that we can use to attack here. Jay, I know you wrote this article again, it's on the site. I would highly recommend everyone to read it, but I'd love for you to just chat a little bit about the themes that you kind of highlighted and how are you thinking about using the schedule to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, I know that's not the easiest grid to look at right now. I actually have it posted pinned on my Twitter. But don't overthink these things, right? Look for the standalone games, the Thursday nights, the Monday nights, Sunday night football. Also, you can use resources like 506 Sports to see what's going to be the CBS game of the week, the Fox game of the week, and also the international series. They're expanding it. The NFL also did a deal where they actually gave rights, kind of like divided up the globe and gave certain rights to certain teams. And I think like the Rams and a couple other teams are like on there multiple times. So just some things where easy ones that stand out are Buffalo. I think that's going to be a hell of a game in Los Angeles, taking on the Super Bowl champions with the Rams. And then they go and play Monday night against Tennessee at home. I think the Bills right now are the best team in football as well. Josh Allen, just such a star. Also Tampa Bay, I think their first 4 are at Dallas on Sunday night, at the Superdome, first New Orleans, and home against Green Bay, and then Sunday Night Football again against Kansas City. So I think probably the lowest total of that game will be in the Superdome. So that's usually, those are some fireworks right away. And, I would also look at the front loading, the back loading of schedules. It also kind of helps you. I come from a sports betting background, so week 2 is always known as overreaction week, right? So we stare at this grid, we do all these things, and then week 1 happens, and we think that that's just fact. And a really profitable way from a sports betting perspective is take the team that laid an egg. I think Aaron Rodgers got, a couple years ago, maybe last year. I think it was last year. Went down, laid a complete egg, and then after that was just Aaron Rodgers, so MVP, right? So those are just some things I would look at. Which teams have 6-7 games in prime time? If you're looking at it from the TOC side, which the Owners Club, where those games that are locked in before kick, whether that's of course, Thursday night games, but there's also a lot of international games this year. There's 8:30, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time games. So especially them sending Tom Brady and the Buccaneers over to the first game in Germany, that just for me is just kind of like, all right, the NFL is actively looking to make this international. And then week 1, I think you have Buffalo and the Rams, which I talked about, which is just going to be an awesome game. You have Dallas and Tampa Bay, which is just, stories write themselves there. And then you have the Super Bowl rematch from a few years back, which of Russell Wilson taking all of his weapons in Denver, and there are tons of weapons there, to Seattle for what will be an emotional homecoming on Monday night. So those are kind of the biggest takeaways with that. And I think of, obviously we're making assumptions here, and Dapper has done a lot of good things and a lot of things that maybe as collectors we kind of scratch our head with. But I just have a hard time thinking they're not going to do some big stuff for those week 1 standalone games.
Yeah, I know you kind of laid out some of the details here on how you're thinking about attacking, but to me, I think it really comes down to that dual pronged approach of how do you identify teams that are most likely to have utility, especially early in the season, because I do think that Dapper will come in with a bang for the schedule or for the introduction of the season, and really come out firing with some of the challenges early on in the season. And then the second thing, the other prong is long-term, how do you hold? And I think that kind of the schedule balancing that you talked about, who's got primetime games late in the season, who might not have, much primetime, many primetime games early in the season, might not have much TV exposure early in the season. What teams are going to be bad early in the season and give you an opportunity to kind of monitor players for some buy low opportunities late in the season. I think those are the things that I would think about. Ryan, any team schedule stand out to you when you saw it, either in terms of that kind of primetime game or just like, man, they've got a lot of really, really marquee matchups that we weren't necessarily expecting?
I think Philly has a very manageable schedule, not necessarily, propped with primetime games that I really care about, but they have a very manageable schedule. In week 4, Miami goes to the Bengals. I think that's a sneaky shootout where Miami could really hang points on Cincinnati. So if you're looking from a TOC standpoint, especially, that's one where Tua, people are mostly, lukewarm on him at best. So you might be able to get a good deal on him. The Saints start off pretty interesting. At Atlanta versus Tampa, at Carolina versus Minnesota versus Seattle. That's an interesting run to maybe get something going for them. The Chiefs, on the other hand, have a brutal schedule this year. They have the hardest schedule in the league by far. So you're going to see them in primetime spots, but they're down Tyreek Hill. That's going to change how they play offense. But they are going to be in competitive games more likely than not, and a lot of them.
Any players that you're thinking about? I know we talked about the Miami players, but any kind of other individual players who might either have an opportunity to start hot and start hot in prime time. You mentioned the Chiefs, and I'm thinking like Sky Moore might be an example, but any other players that you're thinking about, based on the schedule, you might be interested in targeting either, early because they could start hot and there might be an opportunity to get them in challenges or offload at a premium, or any guys that you're thinking, hey, they might start real slow, but they, have some opportunity to get better over the course of the season with an easier schedule?
I'll start with a rookie that you mentioned before. I think Chris Olave is in an interesting position to start hot with that schedule. I think you're right too. Him being the 1B is probably a good thing for him in that offense. So if he has his debut moment in week 1, and hopefully he has like a 50 yards, 5 catches, 60 yards, 1 touchdown kind of game, I'd be interested in that. Philly opens in Detroit, so I think that's pretty interesting as well. Like Jay said before, that Bills-Rams game on opening night has a lot of potential on both sides. I call these variable games, meaning the Packers and Vikings is another one. They can play in a number of different ways. Both teams, if this game was 20-17, I wouldn't be blown away by that. But if this game was 38-35, I don't think it would surprise anyone either. So that's one in particular I have my eye on for week 1. Cowboys-Bucks, like he said too. Last year, that was a great game on opening night. I think Dallas got a little worse, and I think Tampa got a little worse. So my expectations are a little bit lower than they were last season for that, but that's also definitely a game with a ton of potential early in the season.
And I can take the other side of the coin there. A team like Arizona, we kind of talked about that kind of that when there's smoke, there's often fire there, and they don't play a primetime game until week 7, and that's Thursday Night Football. I mean, I know they have that game against the Chiefs week 1, which will be interesting, but I think with all the other fireworks going on, they'll kind of go under the radar a little bit. Although I wouldn't be shocked if the Cardinals win that game. I think they're only a 3-point dog, and I think that's kind of getting bet down a little bit. Obviously, that's with the assumption that Kyler Murray is going to be there. But I can see kind of trouble in paradise, right? It's not a huge market. There's kind of some drama going on there. And then you're not going to get that utility of a primetime game and really not a true primetime game until the New England on Monday Night Football, because their first 2, week 7 is a Thursday night game, which for obviously our TFC purposes, we're all about. But then week 11, it's an international game. So, and I'm not even sure the time if that locks before or after. So they really don't have a lot of primetime games for a team that I think they were the last unbeaten last year, if I remember correctly. So, that's one maybe on the other side of the coin to Ryan's points.
Yeah, I know we've been talking a little bit about the kind of the Owners Club dynamic. If you're not playing the Owners Club, or if you didn't play last year, I think that's silly. I would have played, except that TJ and Justin won't let me play. They say it's like a competitive advantage or something. I say it's just good information. But that being said, season 2 going to debut this summer. And, certainly the season 1 cards already in play. You can go buy those on the market at the Owners Club website. But season 2, we talked a little bit about the strategy. One of the key strategic elements of the Owners Club is that you can play players who you already know the outcome if they've played on Thursday or Saturday or Sunday morning. The slate locks on Sunday at 1 p.m. regardless of when the other games are. And it's definitely an element that we saw a ton of people get a huge edge last year by really planning that in advance. Any teams, I know we've talked about some individual games, especially early on, but any other teams that we haven't mentioned where you see some potential to kind of get ahead of that dynamic on the TOC front? I know we put out a tweet earlier this year about the teams that had multiple games pre-lock. And I say earlier this year, we put out a tweet after the schedule was released about teams that had multiple games pre-lock. So you can find that on the Twitter feed. But any of those teams particularly catching your eye and you're thinking might be an opportunity to stack here?
One thing that I find interesting for the TOC format in particular is I think in general best ball or season long, the Raiders are going to be tough to manage. But in TOC, I think Derek Carr is going to be a really good asset, especially because in our platform, good quarterback play is actually rewarded. Like you can be an average player and run for 60 yards a week and be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. But Derek Carr, his arrow's pointing up with the addition of Devontae Adams. You don't have to figure out, who's gonna be the guy that week to pair him with necessarily, even though you certainly could stack him with either the tight ends or the wide receivers. But he's a guy in particular. The Las Vegas quarterback card is one that I think I'll be looking to get a good value on early.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about, with the Raiders is they're going to be trailing a lot of games, and not because their fault, they're just in such a tough division. And I mean, there's just going to be some unbelievable shootouts. Another thing is I think this is coming from a sports betting background is, yes, everyone knows Tyreek Hill is now on Miami, but because of all the other trades and whatnot, I don't think that is being priced in enough. I don't think that because it's really like we've talked about before. Ryan's mentioned, if Tua is a top 10 quarterback, with the new coach and the system they're bringing over from San Francisco, it's like Waddle and Hill. That's a problem. If Tua is a good quarterback, that's a serious problem. And I just don't think, yes, we know that, but it's almost like we are not appreciating the fact that, Tyreek Hill and Waddle and Gesicki. And I mean, it could be really good there. Now, obviously if Tua doesn't, we're here for the upside, we're here to roll those dice.
They're the only team that if I was a defensive coordinator, I don't know what I would do. I can sit here and just think like from a macro standpoint, like what I would do to most offenses. That's the one where I wouldn't sleep that night.
Wow. For a team that was not particularly good offensively, that is some high praise. Yeah. I'll say for me, the game that I kind of had circled was the Pittsburgh-Cleveland game, week 3. And I think that there's, I don't know how much movement we've seen in the marketplace yet. And so obviously once the season 2 cards are actually released, we'll see kind of the market dynamics. But I think that Pittsburgh offense is probably, particularly the Pittsburgh passing game, is probably one that's going to be underrated with the turnover at the quarterback position, the turnover at the wide receiver position. And, I could see that divisional game against Cleveland turning into a little bit of a shootout, or at least a shootout to try to keep up with a dominant Cleveland running game if they're able to establish that running game. So I think for me, as I looked at it that early in the season, Pittsburgh passing game was definitely one that I was interested. Ryan, you already called out the Miami passing game in week 4 at Cincinnati. It's the Thursday night football game. And by the way, they start New England at Baltimore, Buffalo. So there's a pretty good chance that offense hasn't, really clicked yet by the time they get into a shootout at Cincinnati. So I think those were the two that really, to me, I would try to be ahead of the curve on, getting some of those teams early on and hoping for some Thursday night football fireworks.
Yeah. One last thing I would add is just, I would make sure it's all offensive oriented while you're making your decisions. Just defense really until about week 4, week 5, the stickiness with the defense is just not nearly as strong as offenses. We might look at some of the defenses preseason, the Washington Commanders last year, right? They were talking about how many records they were going to be. And then I don't even think they had a top 5 defensive, in any week. So that's just one thing I would know. It's an offensive league. Defense kind of changes year to year. Yes, we could probably guess which teams are going to be in the top 15 or bottom 15, but don't make too many decisions based on team defenses.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, and as I was looking at the schedule grid, I've loved looking at this thing. It's such a great tool. The other game that kind of stood out to me a little bit was that international game in week 4, Minnesota and New Orleans. I feel like that. I know we haven't generally seen a ton of shootouts in international games, but we've seen a lot of sloppy play, and sometimes sloppy play can lead to offensive fireworks, and sometimes it can lead to defensive fireworks. But those are both teams that I think you could see an offensive explosion out of. And again, I don't think you're going to get a premium on the week 2 Thursday night football game with KC and the Chargers, but I think you could get a premium on some of the teams that we just talked about in weeks 3 and 4. All right.
I'll have my eye on the Jets and Jaguars in week 16. Is that ugly Thursday night game that no one wants any part of, that ends up being the most entertaining Thursday night game of the year?
Jets
That's
and Jaguars.
that's one of those things. I like the Steelers call, by the way. I hadn't thought of that. That does make sense. That's interesting.
That's totally on brand for Ryan. Just 10 steps ahead. 10 steps ahead.
Man, week 16. You're really playing the long game if you're buying to hold for week 16 already.
I'm a sick maniac when it comes to sports speculation. I'll fully admit it. And unlike Jay, I'll flip too. I'm not against that. If you hate me for it, I'm sorry, but sometimes that's the name of the game. You got to do it sometime.
Absolute sunk cost comes for us all. That's business school 101, right?
That's right. More information is always better information. Jay's already out here throwing out week 1 NFL game lines. I didn't know they set NFL game lines 4 months in advance.
Within hours of the schedule being released. Ryan knows.
I don't really dabble in that, but yes, they're out immediately, and you're right. Week 2 is a wonderful week. I agree.
That's wild. Well, appreciate the insight. Any last thoughts, any kind of last macro takeaways you guys had on draft and schedule and just thinking about all day collecting? Does it change your strategy at all?
Yeah, I tend to focus on good schedule runs. So like for me, if there's a player I like that starts rough, that has an easier way later, I like to buy the dip more so. So that's something between now and opening day I'll be digging into a lot in a variety of ways. And in general, I'm very interested in dabbling in NFL all day and playing the Owners Club again. I loved the Owners Club last year, quite frankly. I really did.
Yeah, the Owners Club makes you a better fantasy and even sports better, just because, with not getting vultured and the game theory of, okay, well, all I need is a 85th percentile out of my quarterback. So maybe I'll just take the Thursday night a play. But yeah, the biggest thing is I'm just ready for some football, and I know that the market's down and whatnot, but I mean, what market isn't down right now? And if you're watching a stream about NFL all day in middle of May, I mean, I think you're looking for upside, and I think you're ready for some football. So let's just you might have to, as they say in sports betting, hold your nose when you go to the window when you make some of these purchases. But yeah, I think we're gonna have some fun.
Yeah, I'll just end with, I think that the theme of, what is low risk, high reward. I think the Zach Wilson call is a great example of that. And looking at the draft and the draft articles you guys wrote, looking at the schedule and thinking about how do you make some of those bets where the downside is more limited, whereas the upside is pretty material. Obviously, if they were easy to make, everyone would be doing it. That's why we're going to keep checking in during the off season and giving our thoughts on it. But, definitely would encourage all of our listeners to think about those strategic elements, but then find the guys that you think, the Tuas, the Zach Wilsons, hey, that their upside price isn't baked in and their downside price may already be largely baked in, and take some shots on those types of guys. All right. Well, I think that will do it for us today. And thanks guys for joining. On behalf of Jay and Ryan, I am Bach. It has been a pleasure tonight, and see you guys soon.